Oh, g'day there. How are you? Welcome to Grouse Gardening with the Alligator, aka Uncle Christopher. Now, have you ever wondered how you can have an infinite supply of basil without ever having to buy basil again? Well, you're in for a treat. I'm going to show you how to propagate basil. Do you know what propagate means? Propagate is basically cutting off a piece of the plant, in this case basil, it could be a flower, it could even be a fern, putting that in soil and growing a new plant. Now, there's lots of different ways of doing it. For example, if I were to propagate this fern, I wouldn't want to chop it. I would want to pull out one of these pieces and replant it. In fact, you would effectively divide the fern, plant it in two pots, and then you have two ferns. For basil, it's slightly different. What we want to do is chop a piece of the stem off right here below what we call a leaf node. So you'll see the leaves here. To propagate, you want to chop right below the leaf nodes because that is where the roots are going to sprout from. Now, to propagate properly, what you need, today, because it's a bit more delicate, I'm just using kitchen scissors, but you can use even secateurs or any sort of cutting instrument. The most important thing is that it's properly sterilized, because effectively what you're doing is surgery on the plant, and you want your instruments to be very clean. So I've just sterilized it in boiling water so as not to infect the plant with disease. Now, don't you reckon it would be pretty amazing if you could propagate a human being? If you could chop off the arm, plant it in soil, and then grow another person? Well, I haven't tried that, and you shouldn't try that at home, but we know that you can do it with basil. So let me show you what we have here. We have the scissors, which are disinfected, and we have my propagation station, as I like to call it. You can use any receptacle and fill it with water from the tap. That is where you're going to put your new stems to propagate. Now, what we have here is your common garden variety sweet basil, which is great for use in a variety of different recipes, including pesto. This is actually a Genovese basil, which is a variety of sweet basil. The other advantage to propagation, you see, is when you harvest the basil, it's going to encourage it to grow bigger, stronger, and taller. So you see here I have quite a lot of basil, which is probably growing a bit too close together, but that's okay, we use a lot of it. And when you propagate, you want to really cut off as much as possible down to the lower leaves. So that encourages it to grow thicker and bushier and stronger. So let me just, what I'm going to do here, as I mentioned, is cut right below the leaf node, just here. So then you have your basil. Now, you don't want all of this because you don't want the bigger leaves, because it's just going to suck energy and make it more difficult to grow. So what you can do is just pull off these leaves here, these little ones here, and you're going to keep these because obviously they're great for cooking. So when we harvest, I might even pull off this big one as well. And these little ones. So just keep really the top leaves, and then what you're going to do is prop it in that propagation station. So the most important thing is to keep the stem in water. Now, some people say you need to change the water every second day, every third day. Look, it's not an exact science. I would say change the water every time you think of it, maybe every 3 or 4 days. And you're going to leave that there for a couple of weeks until it grows roots. So I'll do a couple of these, as I said, right below the leaf node, pulling off some of these. Some of these leaves here, these two big ones, and pop it in right there. Now, I'll do a few more of those, but what I'm going to show you now is what they look like in 2 or 3 weeks. You see here, these are ones that we prepared earlier. Now, can you see, look at all those lovely roots in there. That one's running a bit low on water because it's been sucking up the water. In fact, they both have. But these probably a bit longer than 2 weeks. I'd let them go a bit longer, but that's fine. I mean, you can let them go a bit longer, but after 2 weeks they should be ready to plant. So let me pull out one so you can see. Just being a little bit gentle. Now look at all those good roots there. You can see there's roots coming out of both areas where there's a leaf node. We don't really need those top roots. We want the bottom roots because that's where it's going to grow from. So as I've probably let this go a bit longer, I don't need all those roots. I'm going to make it chop about here. So we have a good amount of roots to plant that. Now, a lot of people, when they propagate basil, when they plant it, they find that sometimes it dies. And that is a common problem. I get a lot of people asking me, look, I get the roots when I plant it in water after 2 weeks, but when I transfer it to the soil, I'm finding it dies. Now, a good way to explain this is what you have here is a basil that's used to living in the water. It's been in there for 2 or 3 weeks, so it's really become accustomed to that environment where it's saturated with water. So when you're transferring it to a different environment, you're transferring it to soil which is much drier. So for the first few weeks, what you want to do is keep the soil very moist. Keep the soil moist all the time so it gets used to the transfer, so it's not such a shock, because plants, when they go into shock, can die. So we'll just pop it in there. There you go. There you go, little fella. I like to give it a kiss for good luck. Maybe even take off this little leaf here and take off this one because it's not as healthy. And there you go. So we can do that with all of our leaves, all of our basil rather. Here's another one that's got plenty of great roots on it. There you go. Pull those off. Propagate there. Pop it in there. And I've put a little bit of plant seed, but it's not necessary. I mean, what you really only need is the soil. A bit of plant seed won't harm it. So you see there we've got these 2 plants that have come from there. So we've basically multiplied that basil that I propagated a few weeks ago into more plants. And you can keep doing this over and over and over again until your entire garden is filled with basil without ever having to buy any more basil. It's a great way to save money, to have homegrown basil available for all your cooking needs. So any questions, you can find me on Uncle Christopher, aka the Alligator, hashtag on Twitter or on YouTube. Comments down below. Thank you so much for joining and good luck propagating.